Welcome to STEM Mission Possible with me, Peter Gay Kirby. Today, for biology, we will be looking at diffusion in leaves. We would have covered what it is that diffusion entails, what's happening in the process. And now we're looking at how this process plays a role in the survival of living things as it provides substances that are required for living things. It falls under the theme transport in living things. Today, we're looking at plants. What is happening with regards to diffusion in the leaves? Our lesson focus will be to define what gaseous exchange is, because we're looking at how the gases enter and leave the leaves. The leaves are so important for plants because without them, the survival of the plants would be impacted significantly. So we're starting with the leaves. So we want to know how these leaves are actually adapted for gaseous exchange and what is the role of a particular aspect of the leaf, which is the stomata, in facilitating this process. So let us look at what we already know. Photosynthesis. We would have looked at photosynthesis by this stage, but let us quickly do a recap. Let us recall that it requires carbon dioxide, water, and energy from sunlight to produce glucose and oxygen. We would have looked at respiration, whereby oxygen and glucose, these are necessary to produce carbon dioxide, water, and heat energy. These things are happening in our plants. The cell structure of plants, both plants and animals, but for right now, we need to recall the cell structure of plant cells, as the membranes of these cells will play a pivotal role in how gases and other substances enter and leave each cell. Do you remember levels of organization, where you looked at cells and how they come together as they perform similar roles to form tissues, then organs, and then organ systems. And then we have the complete organism. Now, where did we start? In order to get to this, we would have looked at a definition of diffusion. We would have seen STEM simulation activities. Check out the PhET website. Factors that affect the rate of diffusion. This was summarized. As you advance in biology, these will be studied in more details. And then we had sharing personal experiences of diffusion in everyday life via an awesome website. It's called Flipgrid. Check it out. Check out some of the videos. Create your own and host that lovely live discussion with videos, responses from those who are participating with you. So for today, we're looking at gaseous exchange. What does it entail? It is a process in which plants and other organisms exchange different gases within the environment. Now, plants obtain the gases they need through their leaves. What do they require for respiration? What do they require for photosynthesis? Let us check your understanding. What did you place in these? What were your suggestions for these spaces? Did you put oxygen? Yes, they require oxygen for respiration. And for photosynthesis, plants require carbon dioxide. Have a look at this plant, at these leaves. I wonder, You know, you can learn a lot by observing even before you read content. I wonder, from our basic knowledge, can you identify any feature that you believe could help with diffusion? Today we're going to learn about those features. Let us see what you thought of. You will see being revealed during the course of the lesson. Now, adaptations of the leaf for photosynthesis and gaseous exchange. Here is a summary table. And we're looking, you'll notice that where diffusion is included, that they are in bold print. So for example, thin, remember that picture. Look to see if anything that you thought of has begun to be revealed that will show that you already have a basic understanding. Let us look at this. Thin. They're so thin, and this is beneficial in that it provides a short distance for carbon dioxide to move by diffusion into the leaf. This has to do with photosynthesis specifically. We know that the leaves also contain chlorophyll. They have small pores called stomata, and these pores allow carbon dioxide to move in by diffusion into the leaf. There are also vessels, that help to transport water and food that are a part of the process of photosynthesis. But let's look again. We also have guard cells. Now, these open and close the stomata, which were just mere pores, for diffusion of gases in gaseous exchange, depending on the conditions. What are some of the other adaptations of the leaf for gaseous exchange? The cells in the spongy mesophyll layer. Yes, here's an introduction to the name of the lower layer of your leaf. Notice the leaves that we looked at, even the area at the bottom, the back, what we call the back of the leaf, that lighter color. You'll notice that right within that area, you actually have loosely packed cells that provide a large surface area for gases to easily move around and diffuse. Here is a diagram. So this would have been the lower part of the leaf. You remember from the picture, it would have looked a bit pale. You would have been looking at the epidermis. It's a bit pale because it has less chlorophyll underneath. But that is where you also find the stomata and the guard cells. They're at the bottom so that there is not too much evaporation and the passage of gases can be easier modified by the stomata and by the guard cells because they're not so exposed as the top of the leaf would be. Here is what we're speaking about, however, this whole spongy mesophyll area, which you'll notice that the cells here are not tightly packed as observed in the area or the layer above it. Secondly, they are adapted for gaseous exchange by having openings called stomata to allow carbon dioxide into the leaf and oxygen out. Here is a close-up. So we have the stomata opening. Remember, the guard cells are the cells that cause it to open or close. And we have carbon dioxide and also water vapor. This would have been given off also by other processes such as transpiration. But just to show that this is also a form of diffusion of a gas called water vapor. The gases diffuse into the intercellular spaces of the leaves through pores called stomata, and these are normally, as I had explained, on the underside of the leaf. The cells in the leaves, as we have observed, are loosely packed to facilitate efficient diffusion. From these spaces, they will diffuse into the cells that require them. Water vapor as a gas also diffuses out of the stomata. The stomata are surrounded by guard cells, which control their opening and closing. So this puts about 2 or 3 slides that we had viewed. This puts everything in a nutshell so that we are able to capture some of the processes that take place in the leaves that would require diffusion to allow substances in and out of the cells of the leaf. Let us have a closer look at this point at the guard cell and the stomata. In a further topic, you will understand how it is that the guard cells actually open and close. What causes this mechanism to work so efficiently? But right now, let us just observe the structure, observe the guard cells. Notice when they're swollen with water, that is, that the stomata would open, and as they are shrunken, it would have closed the stomata. Here we are now, looking at all of that in one diagram. We had looked at the adaptation of the leaves, and we looked at what is happening in the layers of the leaf, and now we are combining that with what is happening in the stomata. So let us recap. Photosynthesis. So we have carbon dioxide that diffuses from the air. Why does it diffuse? Because there is higher concentration of carbon dioxide in the air. It will then diffuse into the cells of the leaves that have a lower carbon dioxide concentration. Oxygen diffuses from the cells in the leaves. Why? Because this is where there is a higher concentration of oxygen, and it will then go into the air, which has a lower concentration of oxygen. This is what is happening when we speak of gaseous exchange, which takes place in the leaves via the stomata. And as you review that, you can pause the video and observe the processes as annotated on the diagram to the right. Let us capture this video which explains even further gaseous exchange in flowering plants.
Gas exchange in plants happens through these tiny little pores in the leaves, most of them on the underside of the leaves, called stomata. The gases move in and out of these stomata via the process of diffusion. Remember that process, the movement of particles from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide enters the leaf and oxygen exits the leaf overall as a net gas exchange, and during respiration oxygen enters the leaf and carbon dioxide exits the leaf if it's doing more respiration than it is photosynthesis. Now, respiration and photosynthesis are equal and opposite equations, so if they were doing the same amount of each reaction, then there wouldn't be really any gas exchange at all. But that's not the case in plants. What they do is actually respire 24 hours a day, but at a very sort of low level. And then when the sun is out, they do loads and loads of photosynthesis. So when the sun is out, the net exchange of gases is going to be in favour of photosynthesis, and when it's dark, the net gas exchange of gases will be in favour of respiration. You can represent that much more easily on this graph to be able to show how that will happen, and therefore thinking about what time of day it is, you'll be able to work out which gases would be wanting to come in and which gases would be wanting to go out. Leaves are really well adapted for gas exchange. They've got a nice big broad large surface area for diffusion, really thin, so again gases diffuse really quickly. Lots of air spaces within the spongy mesophyll layer, really good for diffusion. Loads of stomata, so lots of points for gases to come in and out, and actually the stomata can be open and closed depending on the conditions, which is also another advantage for gases exchange. You need to know a practical to do with this topic, which is basically being able to investigate the effect of light on the net gas exchange in a plant. Now, it's already been mentioned elsewhere in the course if you've watched some of the other videos, but there's a very important indicator called hydrogen carbonate indicator, which you can use to measure CO2 levels. You can put aquatic plants directly into hydrogen carbonate indicator to see what happens. Hydrogen carbonate indicator, which has had lots of CO2 bubbled through it, should be really yellow. And then as the plant uses up more and more of that CO2, it should go sort of yellow to orange to purple. And so that's the kind of colour change you are looking for depending on how much CO2 there is. So you can set up experiments such as this, where maybe you've got 4 tubes, 3 with leaves in and 1 as a control tube. And you put the same volume of hydrogen carbonate indicator into each tube. And then you can expose them to different light intensities. You could wrap one in aluminium foil, you could wrap the other one in muslin, which is going to let a little bit of light through, and you could leave one completely exposed to light. And then you could shine light on them for about 45 minutes. Now you should be able to predict these results. What you'd expect to see is the one with foil on the hydrogen carbonate indicator would go yellow, because doing no photosynthesis at all, but still doing respiration, because remember it's respiring 24 hours a day, so actually it's going to be producing some CO2, so it's actually going to go more towards the yellow end of the colour spectrum for the hydrogen carbonate indicator. The one with muslin on, well, it's getting a bit of light in, but not very much. It's probably doing about an equal amount of photosynthesis and respiration, so we're not expecting any colour change, no difference in CO2. The one with no covering at all, though, it is going to be using up all the CO2 inside that tube for photosynthesis, so it has gone very purple. Have a go at these 10 true or false questions to see if you really understand this topic well.
I hope you did pause. I would encourage that you pause and try those answers before the answers turn up in that video. But it provides great points that you can write down for your notes. Please remember that you should still use your textbook that has been prescribed for you, that you have available for you in studies along with this video. A round of applause. That would be the end of the lesson, but not the end of the video. Let us do some checkups. So we're going to be looking at our Take 5 checkpoint, and this is where you will get 5 questions. Leaves are dash, which allow short distances for gaseous exchange. In gaseous exchange, during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide diffuses in, or while so-and-so diffuses out of the leaves. That should say and while. Small pores in leaves which allow gases to diffuse in and out are called the cells around the stomata, which affect the rate of gaseous exchange. What is this? What are these called? Carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaves from the atmosphere during respiration from an area of dash concentration to inside which has a dash concentration. Let's check your responses. Pause the video, write these down as notes, and try to figure out the answers. Let's go. Leaves are thin. Yes, they are thin, which allow for short distances. Carbon dioxide diffuses in, while what diffuses out of the leaves? Yes, that's what happens in gaseous exchange. There should be no or. Small pores in the leaves which allow gases to diffuse in, what are these called? In and out, stomata. What about the cells that surround the stomata. Yes, the guard cells. So why is it that carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaves? Why in? What is happening? It's moving from an area of high concentration inside, which has a low concentration. So it's moving from a high concentration to inside, which has a low concentration. So if you've done well, give yourselves a round of applause. Remember, it's a video. Pause and pace it for your own pace, your timing. Take your notes and still use the textbooks that you have available for you. Here are some suggestive reading resources. The Investigating Science for Jamaica, Book 3, The Separate Sciences. And we have various biology CSEC text resources and revision guides.